What's the story, Morning Glory? What is the word, Hummingbird? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for this review of Married at First Sight UK Season 7, Episode 21, The Dinner Party. So let's get into it. So this week, they had a task. Everybody had the same task, and it was to write an anonymous letter to another couple, letting them know how they're coming across, how you feel about them, how they're being perceived by everybody else, etc. So, the dinner party. There's definitely tension between Keisha and Kwame. I think Keisha is a very fragile woman who puts up a front that she's extremely strong and hardcore and the queen of her castle and nothing can knock her down. But I think she's actually a very fragile woman. We all know that in the beginning of the season, she was coming on very, very strong to Kwame. And Kwame was kind of like, trying to keep her at bay. And she kept on really showing him that, she wanted to be intimate with him, that she was very strong in who she was as a woman. She knew what she wanted and she went after it, etc. And Kwame kept on pushing her off until the expert kind of nudged them along, gave them some very useful tools to use. And then after that, it seems like, they were part of the intimacy club. I think that Keisha thought that once she and Kwame crossed that path, once they got into being intimate with one another, I think she thought that Kwame would not only be physically closer to her, but emotionally closer to her as well, I think. And he's not exhibiting signs of being emotionally closer to her, even though whenever they have a commitment ceremony, he says, pretty nice things about her. It just seems like there's just this distance between them, and it really shows at this dinner party. Keisha feels like she doesn't know Kwame as well as the other wives know their husbands. And this is symbolized in how he did not take her to meet his family or to see his home when they had the homestay visit. So she missed out on that opportunity because of him. And so she feels like, she's not as close to her husband as the other wives are to theirs. And I feel like Kwame may not be so sure of having a future with Keisha. Thomas makes a grand entrance. He shows up in Keisha's thigh-high metallic boots. Okay, he really made a grand entrance. He had on what looked like a t-shirt, no pants, and these thigh-high boots. So it was a spectacle to see. Matt and Whitney make their very first appearance as a couple. So when they walk into the dinner party, everybody is really shocked to see them. There's a lot of oohs and ahs and oh my God, because they are still in this experiment and now they're in this experiment together. And of course, how they got together is extremely controversial and extremely polarizing. When they walked into the dinner party, half the group stood up and gave them hugs and congratulated them. The other half refused to stand up and did not acknowledge them at all because they were pretty upset of how the whole Matt and Whitney thing came about. Now, the couples for sure that I know was not happy to see them together was Gemma and Zoe and Matt and Adrian. Gemma and Zoe, because I feel like Zoe felt some kind of way when she was trying to speak with Matt when everything came out at the couples retreat, when they took their little break and their little getaway. And that's when everything came out about Matt and Whitney. And Zoe was trying to give her thoughts and opinions on the whole situation. And Matt completely overtalked her and refused to let her speak. I think that's why Zoe's not happy with Matt and Whitney. Matt and Whitney. And also Adrian and Thomas. They're not really crazy about the Matt and Whitney thing either because Gemma was their close friend. So, yeah. Matt says everyone else is jealous of them because they are the only real couple there, as in they got together because they wanted to be together, not because they were matched anonymously or they were matched as strangers. So he feels like because they have that advantage of wanting to be with one another because they saw each other, they liked what they saw, and they gravitated towards one another, everybody else is jealous because everybody else, some of them are stuck with people that they really don't care for. When they arrive, okay, so we talked about that. Zoe gives Matt and Whitney a piece of her mind. So they all sit down and she lets them know that she doesn't like how they came together. She thinks that it was really foul how they treated Gemma. And everybody forgets about Duca. Duca was also a victim of all of this. But I think it was obvious that Duca wasn't feeling Whitney and Whitney wasn't feeling Duca. So it's like it really doesn't matter. But Gemma was having feelings for Matt. So Zoe gives them a piece of her mind by letting them know that they were wrong in what they did. And Whitney says, well, we don't have to explain ourselves to anybody. And while this is going on, this heated exchange is going on, where Matt and Whitney are probably being kind of, I'm not going to say they're being attacked. It's very natural and expected that some people are not going to like what's going on with them and they're going to question it and they're going to challenge it. And Matt and Whitney, they're going to have to defend themselves. So while all this is going on, this heated exchange between Zoe and this new couple, your boy Thomas has turned his back towards the chaos and he's just reapplying his lip gloss. He was like trying to let them know how he really was not here for this whole entire Matt and Whitney thing. So now they sit down for dinner. Matt, of all people, actually stands up and gives a toast. Okay, which makes me think, okay, are you just doing all of this for attention, Matt? This whole thing with Whitney and trying to stay on the show. Are you really doing all this just for attention? Because you would think that how you came about, how you ended up being where you are now, you would think that you would want to hide, okay, that you would be too embarrassed to even show yourself. But no, not only do you show up with your co-cheater as if nothing happened, you actually want to give this evening's toast. So he stands up, he raises his glass, and he says to everybody, let's just move forward. Let's put the past behind us and let's just move forward. I bet you do want to put the past behind you. You want everybody to forget what happened. You want to be like that scene in Men in Black where they hold up that thing and it flashes in everybody's eyes and it completely erases their memory. Whitney's closest ally is April. April is her best friend in this group, because when Matt and Whitney first arrived, Whitney and April like ran towards each other to hug. So April is her closest ally, and which I think is kind of ironic because Whitney's a cheater. And April is married to a man who detests cheating and who hasn't recovered from being cheated on, and is making April's life miserable because he's so insecure. But she gravitates towards another cheater. I thought that was completely ironic. Shanita and Jordan. So they're having a conversation at the dinner table just amongst the two of them, and they're talking about their future after this process. Jordan seems to be having some very cold feet. He tells Shanita that the only way that he would ever live with someone is if he was deeply in love with that person. Otherwise, he doesn't want to live with another person. And of course, they're not there yet. They're not deeply in love with one another. So Shanita was kind of like, okay, so basically after this experience, then we're just going to go our separate ways, because you're not, head over heels in love with me. I'm not head over heels in love with you. And if you can only live with someone that you're in love with, then what's the point of continuing? And so Jordan tries to let her know, it's not like that, blah, blah, blah. But all of this kind of blindsided Shanita because she thought that they were doing well. And now here he comes with all of his doubts and confusion, and she's not understanding because she's like, I thought we were doing great. So the experts, because they're watching all of this. I think they're watching it in real time. I don't know. The experts are watching this and they're like, yeah, this was not the place or the time for Jordan to bring up such a serious conversation, because now Shanita's being put on the spot. She doesn't have time to really process anything. And then she still has to, put up a brave face for everybody else. This was just not the time and place to have such a conversation. So now it's time for everybody to read their anonymous letters that were written by other couples. So the first letter is read by Zoe and Jenna. So whoever wrote them said that Zoe needs to be more affectionate in public and that they are rooting for their love. Okay, that's fine. That's cute. And Zoe does admit that she does need to be a little bit more affectionate and express herself a little bit more to Jenna. Shanita and Jordan. Whoever wrote their letter said that it seems like because, they are in a secure place, that they're just going to be coasting it until the very end. They're questioning if they're being their true, authentic selves within their marriage and within this experiment. And it looks like that Shanita and Jordan are not addressing bigger issues. And how would this work logistically, like in the real world? Like they're just kind of like very surface, I guess is what the anonymous writer is trying to say. Like, y'all are very surface. Y'all are just dealing with each other on a surface level. Y'all are not really digging deep within yourselves to figure out, what the challenges are in this relationship and trying to fix them. In their defense, Jordan says that, well, I don't even know if this is in their defense or not, but he kind of agrees with the letter writer. He says, well, we don't know how things will work out post-experiment. Nobody knows how things are going to work out. Jordan seems to be getting cold feet instead of wanting to jump into life with Shanita, because the experts say that, even though nobody knows what the future holds, if you're really digging who you're with, you're going to be excited about that next step in starting your lives together. But Jordan is not. He's scared as hell. Moving on. Sophie and Jonathan. Their anonymous writer says that Sophie seems afraid to confront Jonathan, that it's not healthy for Sophie to keep quiet, and if she does, it will be a detriment to their relationship. Jonathan's views are unacceptable. Despite him traveling the world, he seems to be very ignorant on what is socially acceptable. And then they end it with good luck. So once this letter is read, Sophie is very quick to defend Jonathan. Now, Sophie started off, when I first saw her on the show, she started off kind of strong, like a strong, independent woman who knew what she wanted. She has a successful career, I think, in the corporate world. She was like a boss lady. And now she's with this country bumpkin, and all of a sudden it's like she is just fading away right before our eyes. Like she's like half the woman she used to be. She's completely diminished under Jonathan. And because Jonathan, he's so aggressive, he's so dominant, he's so outspoken, and he says he's just very domineering. And it seems like Sophie is just kind of like shrinking next to him. And she really wants to like make this work with him. And I'm not understanding why. Besides him being very easy on the eyes, and that's even kind of fading, because sometimes, when you figure out somebody's personality, their looks kind of fade as well. So she was very quick to defend her man. She was going to stand by Jonathan. And she says that he's gotten better. She says that they've had conversations, in private. And Jonathan says that Sophie is strong, and she does vocalize her opinions, because the letter writer said that she's afraid to, what did they say? That she's afraid to confront Jonathan. Jonathan says that she's not afraid of anything. She's strong. She says whatever the hell she wants to say. Thomas steps in and says that Jonathan doesn't seem to be open to Sophie's opinions, and when she does speak up, he kind of like overtalks her, ignores her, doesn't really pay any attention to what she's saying. So when she does speak up, he's not paying any attention. Matt says that Jonathan is a work in progress. So here we have Matt, the cheater, and he is defending Jonathan, saying that he's a work in progress, that we should just give him time and we should all be patient with him because he's still trying to figure himself out. And Thomas says, well, how old is he? Like, he should have figured this out by now. This man's in his 30s. So George steps in and he tries to shush Thomas. And Thomas says to George, don't shush me. He says, don't ever speak to me again, ever. So now Thomas is triggered. Sophie defends Jonathan more. She says that she wouldn't be with him if she wasn't happy with him. Thomas says, well, no man should ever comment on a woman's body, period. Don't F with me. I don't know who he was talking to. I don't know if he was talking to the crowd in general, or if he was talking to Jonathan specifically, or if he was indirectly talking to George, because I was like, what a thing to say at the very end of that statement. He started off really good, saying that no man should ever comment on a woman's body, period. And then he goes, don't F with me. I was like, who is he talking to? Jonathan attempts to be apologetic for what he said in the past, but Thomas cuts him off again. And then Whitney says that she spent time with Jonathan and that she really knows, what's in his heart. And he's a really nice guy when you really get to know him. So here we have Whitney who's trying to stand up and defend Jonathan. But we know that Whitney and Thomas don't see it for each other. So I don't know if Whitney was defending Jonathan genuinely or she was defending Jonathan because she knows that Thomas can't stand him. Moving on to Whitney and Matt. So their letter writers, they didn't get a letter. They were exempt from this experiment. They didn't get a letter. But the couples were allowed to ask them very purposeful questions about their relationship. So Adrian asked Matt, did you give your all to your marriage? Did you really give Jenna like 100%? Did you really give it the good old college try with Gemma, or did you just give up halfway and because you found something better? And Matt says that yes, he did give it his all. He says all of us have different limitations. And for me, I had already reached mine with her, so I couldn't give any more. And so, yeah, I did give it my all. Shanita asks, are you part of the intimacy club? Matt says that I came into this as a celibate person by choice, and I am no longer celibate. Jordan has a moment with Shanita, just the two of them. And I guess he felt bad about what he told her earlier, how he was, I'm not going to live with anybody unless I'm head over heels in love with them, etc., etc. So he knew how those words affected her. So he approaches her and he apologizes and he gives her kisses and stuff. And he's like, I'm really sorry. We're fine. We're going to be fine. And I can't wait to start my life with you. Moving on from there, George and Adrian, they go and they talk, just the two of them, George and Adrian. Adrian's issue is that whenever George is having a problem with April, he needs someone to talk to, then, he runs to Adrian and he confides in Adrian, and Adrian is like a really good friend to him. He listens, he gives good advice. But then whenever April is around, he acts like he don't even know Adrian. And when April is in the picture, it's like Adrian doesn't even exist. And so he doesn't want to be used like that. Like when things are going bad, you can run into me. When things are great, you're back with April and it's like our friendship is over. Like you've already used me for whatever you needed to use me for. And now you're back with April. And he doesn't like that. And so George tells Adrian that he doesn't like it when Thomas is calling April names. And so he wants Adrian to check Thomas for that. Moving on from there, which I agree with Adrian on that. I do agree with Adrian on that. Like whenever April makes him mad, he needs to go, cry on somebody's shoulder. But then when everything is fine again, he doesn't, like nobody else exists but April. Keisha and Kwame. Their letter writer said that they need to be more open and honest about the progress of their relationship because nobody can tell exactly what's going on with them because they're so guarded. Kwame says that they're very private as a couple. Zoe says that whenever they don't show any kind of, whenever it's hard to read them, exactly, like to figure out exactly what's going on, because you don't see them hug and kiss and hold hands, or him putting his arm around her. You don't see any kind of physical contact between Keisha and Kwame whatsoever. So then people will start forming their own opinions on what's going on, and they can't be mad at that. You're not letting us in. You're not telling us exactly what's going on with y'all. So when we come up with our own conclusions, don't be upset. So Keisha says that she's open with everybody, and whoever wrote that letter should eat some effing humble pie. So she had a very aggressive response to that letter. And the experts, as they watched this, they were like, yeah, her reaction to that letter was completely off. It was a little bit over the top. It's like, where's all this aggression coming from? Keisha, I feel like, is hiding what's really going on in her relationship. Her relationship is not like the others, and she knows that because basically everybody else, even those who are struggling, are affectionate with one another. You can tell that they're a couple. They show signs of being a couple. Keisha and Kwame do not. They don't show those signs. If you didn't know who they were and you just happened to come across them, you would not know that they were a couple. Or if they were a couple, you would think that they're either in the very, very, very beginning of getting to know each other, or they're like at the very, 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 like they've been married 30, 40 years or something, and the spark is gone. But they don't look like a couple that just got married and that is really hot and heavy for one another, even though they're part of the intimacy club. You couldn't tell. I think this, and that's where I had made the note here that I think because they, Keisha wanted to be intimate with Kwame so bad, and eventually he gave in. I think that she thought that that was going to bring him closer to her on all levels, but it didn't. It absolutely didn't. Now they're probably intimate in bed, and that's it, nowhere else. And I don't know if she's beginning to feel used or what. Thomas and Adrian, their letter writer was extremely positive, so they probably came from Zoe and Jenna, because all their letter said was that they're acknowledging the progress that they've made as a couple, and Adrian definitely gives Thomas peace and calm. Oh yeah, they did mention this, so the letter writer did mention this. Adrian is so busy trying to control Thomas and coddle Thomas and pull Thomas back when he goes buck wild on these people. But what does Thomas do for Adrian? What is he really doing for Adrian? How is Thomas helping Adrian? How is Thomas making Adrian's world a little bit better? It's very one-sided. It's Adrian giving all to Thomas, and it seems like Thomas is not giving anything, or he's not giving enough to Adrian. Moving on to George and April. So George comes in. This is what the letter writer said. George came in with insecurities, and April doesn't George came in with insecurities, and April hasn't adequately reassured George by the comments that she has made. They need to address their deep-rooted issues while they have the advantages of the experts there, and that their relationship is coming off as fake. Now, take a big old guess who wrote that damn letter. So they're very defensive when they read the letter, and they talk about how, of course, they're the same thing like Keisha and Kwame. Y'all don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We're handling all of our issues privately. We're very private people. Don't worry about us. We're fine because we're taking care of business in private. Okay, if y'all say so. I mean, what else are we going to do? We can't deny it because we're not there in private with y'all. If y'all say so, but honey, every time we see George is like in a crisis. And April, I don't think is equipped at all to handle all of these issues that George has. And they need to figure this out quickly because George does have minor children. So before April gets all involved and entangled in the children's lives, they need to figure this out quickly on exactly what they're going to do and if they're really in it or not. Because you're going to have children involved now. So, I don't know. But every time I see George, he is down in the dumps. He acts like, it's doomsday. He's just constantly struggling with emotions and the past. And can he trust April? And da-da-da-da. And it's just like, when are y'all ever going to be seriously happy? I mean, he's like the kind of person where poor April probably can't even go to the grocery store with him not calling her like 55 times. And I don't know. George, you need therapy. You need therapy. You need to learn how to trust. 100%. You need to learn how to trust. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. On your way out, please do not forget to rate the video. And if you like this content, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll definitely talk to you later. Bye.